Yet, hey everyone. I'm here with you today hosting Sihasin Hour. Montoya would be here with us, but he's suffering through some winter illness issues. So, the cold or flu or whatever is circulating managed to catch him. So I'm here with you today and am excited to have Patrick Sandoval here with us from the Nygren Montoya Transition Office. So Patrick, thanks so much for joining us again. We really enjoyed chatting with you last Sihasin Hour when we had the transition team here with us and the vice president elect. But really quickly, I'll introduce myself, hand things over to you, Patrick, to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started. I know there were a lot of questions last time, and I know you wanted to answer those. So this is an opportunity to do that, and then also just give us an update on what's happening with the transition, which is imminent. It's less than a week away.
Yeah,
imminent, exciting. Yeah. So yat everyone Ethel Branch Chef being Patwitni Nishlan Nakai Bashas change that Najini Dashache Ado Nakai Dashanella. And I am speaking to you from Kinsana and enjoying the snow. You can't see the blinding snow out my windows. But it's been really, really incredible to get all of this snow. So I'm happy to be here with you in a beautiful space and happy to be here with Patrick. So Patrick, I'll hand things over to you to introduce yourself to viewers.
hello everybody, and hello to Ethel. Actually, we are probably more excited than you are because it's an opportunity for the Nygren Montoya team to let the world know what's going on. We do press releases, we do interviews with the media, but we all know that social media is a unique tool these days and a little different. And so we're happy to be here, happy to report. Unfortunately, President Nygren is not available today, and Vice President-elect Montoya is not available either because they are on some other business that took them away from the facility. But they've asked me to go ahead and be on and give everybody the update. And it's always a pleasure and an honor, actually, to be before former Attorney General and the founder of a few things, Ethel.
Oh, thanks so much, Patrick. And thank you for the work that you've done through the county to help with our relief effort. We really, really appreciate that. So, it's been an all hands on deck sort of experience. And I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to work with you side by side on that deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I want to quickly point out there was a question from the last time about whether or not I was still employed at the county. But I've resigned from the county months ago while I was on the campaign. So we went sometime. I resigned. So I saw that as one of the questions from last time, and I don't want them to think that we're avoiding it. So there's the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Excellent. Well, I thought you were working two jobs full time.
But no, we have great partnership with the county, though. I will. Great partnership.
Well, I'm sure it feels like you're working two jobs. You're probably pulling the hours for two jobs. So. So tell us, where are things right now? I mean, again, we're less than a week away from the inauguration, and what's on you all's agenda? I've been seeing posts on social media with the president, meeting with employees and getting briefed on different issues. The vice president was just at the inauguration for the New Mexico governor. So they're keeping very busy. And so tell us what's going on with the team and what lies ahead here in the next week.
Okay, well, yeah, there's a whole lot happening. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot, but there was no transition dollars made available. So we're having to make sure that we work through this. However, the current administration, the Division of Transportation, has really been helpful in making sure that we've had facilities to work out of and equipment to use and so on. And Department of Personnel Management has really been good to assure that there have been the availability of positions for people to use while we're in the process of transition. So, but moving on to the actual transition itself, there's been a lot of coordination going on between the divisions, the division directors, their program managers, their department directors, enterprises will be starting soon. Interviews for division directors have been ongoing. We had 88 applicants for positions under the Nygren Montoya administration. And so our team working on that has been really proficient about making sure they got everybody scheduled. They've got the technology all lined up. They did things in round one a certain way. They cut that 88 number, I think, down to about 40, 44, and then moved on with the people who made it into the second round. And so very soon here, the president-elect will be making his decisions for the cabinet members. And the goal is to have his entire cabinet, if not the majority of them, with him on Inauguration Day when he gives his speech and talks about how we're going to handle things, how we're going to do things, and maybe even make reference to the individual that'll be in charge of that division, leading the initiative based on all the planning going forward. But aside from that, a lot of meetings have been happening. We've been in contact with our federal partners, our state partners, our county partners, and even in some cases, depending on the issue, our neighboring border town partners as well. A lot of issues there as they relate to social ills and so on. So great networking going on and started. And we even have contact with the White House. The White House has reached out and we're in touch with the appropriate people there because everybody that we know, everybody just seems to be excited about the fact that Mr. Nygren, is a young, energetic, new leader ready to go forward. So he's made the news worldwide. There's been the media outlets contacting us, and it's about the young new leadership and the level of education that he has. And if I'm correct, I believe that he's the first elected presidential candidate with a doctorate degree. So I believe, attained from a educational institution. And a lot of firsts that he's bringing, but yeah, that's been a real exciting part. We've got about 12 people on board here at the transition office, and they're all tasked with different things, making sure that things are getting done so that we're adequately prepared to assume the reins of Navajo Nation government come 12 o'clock on January 10th when the president's sworn in. So while everybody's enjoying the inauguration, a crew of people will be making sure that the offices are getting up to speed, and keys are handed over and offices are arranged, and equipment and connectivity and vehicles, all that's being dealt with so that people can just get to work. And same will be required of the division directors. 12 noon, as soon as you're done sitting up there with the president, you got to get to work.
Wow, that's incredible. And I don't know if all of our listeners are aware of this, but when you say working with our state partners, I mean, we're talking about 3 states, right? And really there should be a 4th state, because we do have a land claim in Colorado that I'm hoping soon we actualize on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's very complex to begin with. And then when you start talking about counties, I mean, there's like 3 counties in Utah, there's like 7 counties in New Mexico, 3 counties in Arizona. I think I'm getting it right.
Yeah.
And we're talking like
11 counties.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
I think our team is on top of a lot of that. And the primary one is the federal partners, because we all know that the Navajo Nation's funding is around 60–70% of federal funds. So we got to assure that we're good there. We've been talking to a lot of the divisions and programs to assure that if there's any funds that are in jeopardy, or if we're on a watch list or something, we've got to get all that straightened out to make sure we're good with the federal level and with the state as well. We have a number of contracts with the state level for healthcare services, road maintenance, and so on. So we got to make sure that we're good to go. We got to make sure that we're going to be an administration that doesn't in 4 years report a decline in revenue from our partners. We want to talk about an increase in revenue from our partners service delivery.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the most important things I think of our elected officials, appointed officials, is just make sure that that engine is running on all cylinders, right? Like you're saying. I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion about Indian nations becoming self-sufficient and not relying on federal dollars. But one thing I like to, and I agree, I want us to be economically independent. But at the same time, we're all Americans. We all pay federal tax dollars, and every American gets a certain amount of federal, essentially on a per capita basis, gets a certain amount of money coming back to them through whatever government that they're being served by, whether it's a state or a county or an indigenous nation. So, I mean, making sure that we're maximizing the amount of federal dollars that are coming back home, because we're paying that out. I know I pay so we don't have that many Donald Trumps running around here. No, just kidding. So yeah, I mean, I think that's great that you guys are building those relationships, especially with such important funding partners in terms of just delivering services and aid to our people, to ensure that their basic human needs are being met. So
yeah, awesome. One of the challenges that we know we faced, Ethel, is the decline in federal dollars coming to the nation as a result of the census count. We know that during COVID, they moved forward with the census count anyway, and on Navajo, it was a challenge trying to get accurate numbers. So we know those numbers are low, and we've got to live with that for the next 10 years unless Congress decides to do something different, which they probably won't. But we're going to figure that out. And when you receive federal dollars, and I know you're probably aware of what's referred to the IDC, the indirect cost, that's normally hovers around 20-22% for recipients of IDC. We're down to 12% right now. So we definitely have to get to the table to start talking about how we get that number back up, because again, those are support dollars for the programs to operate to make sure services can be delivered. So that's high on our priority list.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. Cool. Well, when we were chatting before we went on live, you mentioned some excitement about economic development. And I don't know if there's anything you can share with us now, but I'd like to hear more about that, whatever you can share with us.
I think what we can share with you is that President Nygren and Vice President Montoya have a commitment to do economic development and honestly work with the economic opportunities differently. And that's all I can say right now is we're going to do it differently. And however, our economic team is they truly understand. And one of the things that we really want to focus on, we've got to understand where the Navajo Nation lies in the world of economics. We know what we have here, we know what we have now, but globally, nationally, regionally, where can we fit in? What can we be doing from a manufacturing standpoint, from a development standpoint? Because we understand that the backbone of business in the business world is small business, but the Navajo Nation can just continue to just build small businesses because we don't have people that have an income that's disposable to go spend at the small businesses. So we really got to make sure we're working on the effort to develop larger scale projects so that we can employ hundreds, if not thousands of people so that they have what they need to buy locally and feed the smaller business economy. But aside from that, we've got to look at the quality of life. We've got to look at housing. We've got to look at the land status. But like I said earlier, I think the Nygren Montoya's economic team is doing a really great job of analyzing all of that, doing their research and understanding the financing the development, if we're really going to do some manufacturing, the transportation component, and then the legal issues as it relates to taxes and lawyers and the workforce and the partners. So it's really exciting. They're coming up with a lot of stuff, and I believe in President Nygren's speech to the nation and to the partners that we have out there, be it private business or government. It should perk their ears. It should perk their ears.
Well, that's good to hear that he's taking economic development seriously, and that's top of mind, because I mean, I often refer to the nation's comprehensive economic development survey, and the last two that I'm aware of being published were in 2005, when Trib Chowdhury, who is at DED, produced that, and I think he retired shortly after that. And so there was this huge gap in time where we weren't even, doesn't appear that we were tracking economic data that well. And then it was reissued, or a new one was issued in 2018 under the Begay administration, but we haven't seen anything in the last 4 years. So and that, like, the data is so important to helping us know where we are and like where we might be going if we don't do anything, and then also, you know, what the factors are we could be levering if we do take on something affirmatively. So I'm excited. I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we
Yeah.
no matter what you do, you got to have that data. You got to have baseline information so we know how we want to move forward. We got to know what the economies of scales are. We got to know what our what our upstream investments are now, so that they can be understood a year from now, 5 years from now. So it's going to be slow, but it's going to be progressive, and we hope to keep the people informed. And we build small stuff now where we can. We keep people informed on the larger projects and give people hope. They might be able to move back to the reservation in the next couple of years, and they're going to have housing available. And you know that 491 is a major corridor. If not, there's the 4-lane highway, there's the water line out there, there's broadband available out there. There's a study now on a railway out there. Imagine the possibilities out there once all of that is developed. And the chapters along that 491, they've been made aware of that for some time now, but that's a major corridor there.
Absolutely. I mean, we have lots of major corridors, and I-40 and the railroad there. It's a lot in our region. Well, one of the things you mentioned was the selection of directors. When I was appointed Attorney General under the Begay administration, I made sure it was very important to me to be there on the day of inauguration from day one. Like, I met with my staff that afternoon and rallied them and shared with them the new direction we would be going, right? And so I just think that that's so important, to have your full team in place and the leadership infrastructure in place, so that there isn't that uncertainty with the staff, the career staff, and whatnot. So it sounds like you guys have plenty of folks to choose from. And so do you think is it possible that on Inauguration Day, the president-elect will have all of his directors in place?
Well, looking at all the information that we have now, all the interviews they've done, there's 100% people there, but the absolute final decision on some of them haven't been made yet. So I'm hoping for 100% for them, but we'll see. We might hit the 80-90% mark, but the majority of them will be there, if not all of them.
Wow, that's super. I know in the administration I served in, there were some tough to fill positions. So I mean, it's some of the things you mentioned, people, it's almost like if you're working, like I was working in Seattle at the time, it's a huge change to come back home, and the lifestyle change is huge. And so sometimes it makes it difficult to recruit the full breadth of candidates that that you want to recruit. And I know you guys, you know, one of the big things that you talk about is you want people in your administration who can connect with the Diné people at the grassroots level. So I'm sure you have diversity in where folks are coming from. Yeah, I mean, the housing, making sure that folks have a quality of life issues taken care of. Well, now we have lots of Starbucks, so I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
So
interestingly, I think about 5% of those applicants, maybe like 7%, they were not even Navajo. And they were from other Indian nations too. And those interviews were very unique to hear from somebody from another nation and another state to talk about why they wanted to work for the Navajo Nation. And it all went back to Boo Nygren being that young, new guy who's going to change the Navajo Nation. And I want to be a part of it. It's what, you know, they talked about, but it's about like 7% of those applicants were not even Navajo.
wow.
But they all got an opportunity to get interviewed, and some of them didn't even look Navajo, didn't even look Native American, but they were, and it was really interesting. And maybe we'll see some of them. I don't know.
Wow, that's exciting because, you know, the cross-pollination of ideas, if they're working for their nation and they bring, I mean, there are some Indian nations, like we had a question during the debates or the forums at Tuba City about, you know, the dire economics of Indian country. And it's like, well, that's the story of Navajo Nation, but there are some indigenous nations that are they're the greatest employer of their county. And most of their employees aren't even tribal members. They're these huge economic generators, and it's not all gaming related. So, I mean, there are tribes that have found a way to be prosperous.
Yeah.
And so hiring some folks from those nations who have some of those insights, that would be really interesting.
And I know that on the questions, more than likely will be, I thought we were hiring all Navajo, and you know, it's a small percentage, and
Only 8%.
everybody was given the opportunity to apply. Everybody was given the opportunity to, you know, be looked at and be interviewed. So I'm sure there'll be a question about, I thought you were hiring all Navajo, but it is really unique to hear the perspectives of people from other, you know, nations and talk about why they want to come to work on Navajo and be a part of the movement or the change or whatever we're going to call it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that comes and radiates from Navajo Nation that impacts all of Indian country. So it's kind of cool to see.
You know, and although we have to do something different because salaries are terrible with tribal government. You know, for a tribe that's 1/3 the size, 1/4 the size of Navajo, they're paying their top people 150, 200,000 a year. And then we want people to come here to work for less than 100,000. And it's not a big priority of us to change it right now. And President Nygren and Vice President Montoya have said that these people are going to have to work for what's available, but we're making progress on that to make sure everybody understands that. And what we have to offer at Navajo too is not a whole lot. I think the housing's got to be at least 50, 60 years old. And, you know, the little white car with the blue dot on it. So some things are a challenge trying to get out there, but we're working it.
Yeah, I know that's an issue all across Navajo Nation government. I mean,
Yeah.
The pay increases, the minimum wage on Navajo Nation is so much lower than the surrounding jurisdictions. At the Relief Fund, we actually match the surrounding jurisdictions to make sure that our staff are at least getting minimum, you know, a competitive wage for the work that they're doing. But okay, well, we do have these questions from other folks, not just myself. But thanks so much for providing that context and allowing me an opportunity to ask my questions. And then we have a whole bunch from last time. And of course, you know, people continue to watch these things after the live. So I think we reached like 1.5 thousand viewers last time. And a lot of those folks were not actually in the live, right? Like you might see, I don't know how many we have right now. Mahayo can type in how many we have on the live. But so some of these questions may be after the fact questions, but lots of people very curious. So one of the questions we have from Masane and Siaz says she's still waiting for running water. What are your thoughts on that? Well, it's more of a comment than a question.
I think I'd like to, maybe you guys have to help us identify who she is so that we know where she is and where she's talking about. And then look at the radar to see, is she even on the radar for safe drinking water to be delivered to her house? If not, then let's find out why. And there might be a reason that it's maybe she's 10 miles off from the line or something. But if you could help us identify that individual, then this administration would be happy to help her understand where she sits if she's already in the system, or get her into a system if it's something that can be done, or talk with her about the realities of the delivery of water out there. But that's what this administration will be about, is making sure that we get with people and return phone calls and talk to people. So
yeah. Hey, that's that. Speaking of returning phone calls, a lot of offices in the Navajo Nation government don't have voicemail. I hope that's something that you're going to address, or that the new administration is going to address. I mean, it's hard. People, some of these folks, they're grandmas, they call, they want help. They should be able to leave a message and get some follow-up, because sometimes it's hard enough just to find the right phone number to call to talk to the right person. And like literally some of these elders are out herding sheep, and they don't have time to be constantly hounding government officials. So I don't know. That's just a question that came out of that. Do you guys have that issue on your radar?
we want to make sure that constituents are able to talk to somebody, and they have to be reasonable as well, during working hours. But as you indicated, I know probably about 10 or 12 years ago, the nation moved towards probably a cost saving measure and cut back on an operator, and decided to leave everything automated and push number one for this department, push number two for that department. We'll probably take a good look at that to make sure that it's sufficient. And I think one of the things I heard during the campaign was a grandma told me that she couldn't even hear the voicemail talking. And her daughter got on, who has hearing that's okay. She could barely hear it. So we'll look into all that stuff. And one of the things that I know that the nation does is they give everybody an extension. So there are so many extensions out there and so many direct lines that could be beneficial, but could not be beneficial. And based on that question, we will certainly take a look at things to make sure that the Navajo Nation government is in touch with their constituents. And if it's a voicemail setup, then that's what we got to do. But you got to check the voicemails too, to make sure you know what you're doing at.
That is true.
The unique thing about technology is you can leave the office and forward a number to go with you, so you can answer it where you're at. You can still choose not to answer, and it can go to voicemail. So definitely going to look into all that, Ms. Blanche, and based on whoever asked the question, it's something we'll look into.
Yeah, it might seem like a small thing, but it's not. Many people are.
An example that President Nygren gives us is there's been so many 2-hour delays or 2-hour early releases by the government. He talks to us about making sure we're there because somebody might need somebody at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it may not be a life or death situation, but it may be a social situation where here's my chance to get some services at 4 o'clock on Thursday. And it's that meeting that I'm going to make because they're going to help me. And then everybody gets released at 3 o'clock, and that person that's supposed to be at that meeting leaves as well, and that person comes and there's nobody here, that person may decide, well, I'm the hell with it, I want to go do something else now. And it may be detrimental to their lifestyle, their family. So he wants to make sure that we're connected with the constituents and we're there to help them.
Well, I mean, some folks, I'm from Western Navajo, so getting to Window Rock is a 3-hour trek. you
Yeah.
know? So that's, especially in the economic moment we're living in right now, that's a lot of money to get. And most people, you have to have a 4x4
Yeah.
to make it through these roads. So, we're not driving fuel efficient vehicles.
Yeah, in one of the things we're doing and we're pretty excited about is the office of the president and vice president and the representation will be having family meetings now. And the family currently consists of the Department of Division of Finance, Office of Management and Budget, and Department of Personnel Management. There's so many issues that lie just between those three that there'll be some weekly family meetings to discuss a lot of the stuff. One of them that we learned through the process of interviewing the divisions is the hiring process, the background investigations, which these things can take up to 2 months, 2.5 months. And by the time you've got somebody past the background and they're authorized to be hired, they've moved on to another job, or it could be a payment issue. And so all of these divisions have acknowledged that there are challenges, and we've all agreed to make sure that after the Nygren Montoya administration take over, that there's going to be those family meetings and sit downs to discuss these things so service delivery can happen and people can get served. So that's kind of exciting. The family meetings.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, that's how we operate as teams, and we're constantly in communication. That's how you get things done quickly. The background investigation, I mean, our police department has a paper filing system. That's why it takes so long to complete background investigation on Navajo Nation. I mean, we need to be in the 21st century. Everybody else is digital. You can just go to a computer, type in a name, your background check is done in like 5 minutes,
Yeah. And that's one of the major components that they talked about, is that it lies with Division of Public Safety. But to their credit, that particular program has been trying to get funding to implement technology. They just haven't been successful. So it's on our radar. It's something we gotta bring some improvement to and help find funding to get it done.
That's great. Well, we still have those old questions, and then we're getting new questions now. And I just remembered that you're only with us for 45 minutes. Mahayo kindly reminded me. He's not able to speak well, but he can type quite well still. So let me see what we have here in terms of, I know we have the Honorable Lorenzo Bates that's raising some questions, former longtime speaker, former chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, basically an institution in Navajo Nation government. So I do want to make sure we get to answer at least one of his questions. And I don't know, I wish, Speaker Bates, if there's a priority question, let me know. Let's see, I think his first question is a really good one. He mentions that former presidents didn't pursue an Arizona water settlement aggressively, and given where things are now with water in the lakes along the Colorado River system, and he mentions the water is life concept. He's curious about the approach that the administration is going to pursue with respect to Arizona water rights. That's a tough question, and I would expect nothing less from Speaker Bates.
Well, first of all, tell Speaker Bates I said hi, and maybe Mahayo can send that. But if he's listening, that's a top priority for this administration, along with the roads issues, the veterans issues, the infrastructure issues. But water is a huge priority of Vice President Montoya and President-elect Nygren, because again, we've got to solidify our position with water rights, not just on Navajo, but how we're going to get them. We got to make sure that we're out there. We've got good legal people, that we've got good lobbying going on, because again, there's a saying that water will always flow uphill to money and to power. So interestingly, we got to make sure that we're where we need to be to solidify, not just at the local level, but at the national level. And we understand that the states have their current bargaining tools and things that they want, but we hope and we will be putting together a good team to include the water rights, what do they call? The Water Rights Commission, to make sure that things are in place as well, to and listening to our guides, that Water Resources. We've had a number of meetings with them already to discuss some of these issues, and who knows, we may be reaching out to Speaker Bates as well to not only get his guidance, but to talk to him about how he may want to help us make sure that those water rights are secured, because water is becoming so valuable that if we don't have our position and our rights secured, we run the risk of losing them. And that goes back to that concept that water will always flow uphill to money and to power. So we've got to make sure that we're in a solid position to secure water for our future, for economics and the whole 9 yards. And I know the last water settlement that was really doable never made it through with the US representatives. And we have to be concerned about that, because how do we get back there again? And we're going to work on it, because that's a very difficult issue to deal with, especially when you're talking to all the water users across this particular region that take water out of the little Colorado, what we have here. So we're going to prepare ourselves. We're going to make sure that we got good fighters and good positions, and we'll do our best, and we're gonna tackle it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings to mind the current litigation the nation has with the United States over breach of trust in its water rights allocation along the Colorado River. And that is actually going before the Supreme Court. I think oral arguments are this month. So really apropos question. Thank you, Speaker Bates, for your question. And we'll go ahead and pick up some more of those questions from last time. Here's an easy general one. What are the goals in the first 100 days? Is there anything you can share with us relating to that?
Well, as it'll be in the speech, but the big priorities out there, and I told Mahio the last time, was we campaign unconventionally. We listened to the people who were the squeaky wheels, who said, you got to be here, you got to be there, we need you here, we need you there. And sometimes we didn't always go there. What we did was we had our own little system of keeping track of things, and Eastern Agency is the example I like to use, but we heard from the squeaky wheels out there about the big issues related to what people consider big stuff. But when we went out and touched 3,800 hands and shook their hands and talked to them and heard from them, less than 2% of them talked about those big issues. It was the stuff like roads and public safety and healthcare and those kind of things. So President Nygren firmly believes that those are the people that really came out and elected him and Vice President-elect Montoya to that position. So in the first 100 days, plans will be put together to make sure that roads are a top priority. Not necessarily the primary roads, but continue doing what we do with our partners at the state and BIA, but secondary and tertiary roads. We want to start a graveling process. We want to start to make sure we have access to the water that's necessary to place the road material, along with things like road stabilizer. The veterans are going to be a top priority, and the issues that they're dealing with, some infrastructure, and certainly the ARPA funding. And we've gotten our reports from the inside at the Navajo Nation, and we've got our work cut out for making sure that all that ARPA dollars start to get expended and put out there. We got to make sure that we're in good with all of our federal partners at every level, the Department of Interior, the various departments that are all around the federal government, US EPA and the Department of Interior, like I said, Department of Justice. And so there's a number of people that we got to make sure we're solid with as federal partners. Broadband technology is also going to be a huge priority to make sure that we have equity the best we can, because in these days of economic development, it's not just roads and water and sewer land, it's broadband. Broadband has to be a part of it. If we want to entertain a large organization to come out here, we got to make sure we have the bandwidth and the broadband capacity to accommodate those things. Also, the missing and murdered Indigenous people are some of the top priorities, but that'll all be again in the speech, and those are the priorities that we'll be working on.
Well, thanks for giving us that little teaser. We have 5 more minutes left here with you.
We can give you 10 more.
Oh, you can give us 10 more?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Awesome.
we got a big interview coming up, and we just want to be, we're ready for it. So
Okay, good.
Our people were trying to make sure that we had 15 minutes, and I think we need 10. That'll be fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, because there are some really good questions here. One of them is from a woman from Torian chapter, and this actually I think is a much broader question. But before I turn to that, I just want to make a comment. I love what you can never go wrong listening to the people, right? And like you're saying, like that's what brought Mr. Nygren into this, Dr. Nygren into this office. And that concept of taking care of the basic needs of our people. President Obama used to talk about a rising tide lifts all boats. And he talked about that more in terms of the economy. But I think that for Navajo Nation, we're at such an early stage of development, really, as a nation, that we have to just take care of those basic human needs of our people before because we're in survival mode. So many of our people who live on the nation are just trying to make it day to day, and they're not going to be able to take on those bigger things and take risks as entrepreneurs, or be able to prosper if they're just focused on those, like getting food on the table, getting to work on your dirt road. So I'm thankful that he's focusing on those basic human need issues. So this question, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we are fortunate to have President Nygren and Vice President Montoya knowing that position, that we've got to get the basic needs out there. And a lot of the times President Nygren has been approached about business opportunities, and sometimes people may be against it, or there may be an opposition to it. But President Nygren continually says that he's totally against poverty. And when people don't have a job, people don't have an income, people don't have a way to buy food and pay the bills, that's poverty. He says we want people to be independent, and we want to create that independence. So he's anti-poverty, he says, and I've got to get people, to be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, is what he talks about.
Yeah. That's so true. So many of the issues that are challenging our community are poverty issues, whether that's educational attainment, that goes back to nutrition and a kid's ability to actually get to school. But it's also, the high substance use in our community and the high violence in our community, and domestic disturbances. A lot of times people our couples aren't getting along has to do with finances, and having a job. And so yeah, I think that's great. I'm glad that there's that sort of angle on this. So the question is coming from Maria Toledo, and she mentions Torian chapter being behind and needing more organization at that level. Lots of talk, no action. People in the area are frustrated. And so she's just sort of, wondering, like, what can this administration do and to fulfill its promises, and also, make sure that things are happening at that local level.
So earlier when we spoke about the economic component, this administration and the economic team, as well as the constituent services people have talked about, we got to be realistic about where we can deploy a lot of different things and how we deploy it. So the vice president-elect is from Torreon, so there might be a little bit of some priority to get things done. But I always try to recognize the Pinon chapter. And a lot went back to their leadership. I don't know if you've been to Pinon very often, but there was a time when Pinon was just that chapter way out in the middle of nowhere.
Where the highway ends and the wild, wild west begins.
And I give a lot of credit to the leadership there who maintained consistency about what they wanted and fought for what they wanted. And you look at there today, there's not only the school, but the shopping center and the other economic development. There's the hospital now out there, the medical care facility. And so it all supports one another. And, you know, we're certainly going to be there to take a look at Torreon and try to identify or specifically understand what they're talking about and what can we do out there immediately, what's long-term. Let's say that becomes the chapter where we want to grow, and the surrounding chapters receive the ancillary support from the benefits of having some economic development. But I don't think that we have the exact answer now, but it's we're certainly going to look at it and see what it takes and talk to them about some successful chapters as well. And Pinon is, in my opinion, one of those that was way out there, and they're a lot different off now, but it took a lot of years and a lot of dedicated people.
Yeah. It's been really great to see that transformation of Pinon, because I do remember when you know, they didn't have those things, and I sure love to see that road paved between Hopi and Pinon. That's the way I usually get there.
You drive on the dirt road then?
Yeah, the dirt road. It's so much faster, you know, I mean, but a little more tricky, certainly many times out of the year. And then we have a question from former presidential candidate Dolly Manson. And her question is, what is Navajo culture anymore? She says, I don't see much of that in homes anymore. It's an interesting question. It's a tough question, I'm sure, and you only have 3 minutes. But I don't know if you want to take a stab at that. It's
you know, I think one of the things that President-elect Nygren has identified is he really wants to work on a language program that helps Navajo people who want to speak the language, give them the opportunity to learn the language. There's a whole lot to our culture. There's songs, there's stories, there's a lot to the culture. And so we want to make sure that we're able to help retain some of it, because there's a past leader who once said that once you lose your culture, you lose your identity. And once you lose that identity, who are you? So we don't want to be there. And I know that both President Nygren and Vice President Montoya believe in that wholeheartedly. And I'm happy that they speak Navajo. I'm happy that they understand Navajo. I'm happy that they talk Navajo whenever they can. So we'll put a big emphasis on it. And to answer her question specifically, you know, what is Navajo culture anymore? I won't say I'm afraid to answer that, but I want to be cautious, because Navajo culture has become so many different things, and we need to get back to the basics. And I know Dr. Montoya, I know that what she would like to see is more teachings, more storytelling, and more of our language to be understood. But we got to start somewhere, and looking at it like an elephant, we can eat it, but we got to do it one piece at a time, and saving that, all of that stuff is important. And we'll see what we can do. This administration will see what they can do.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And we have 1 minute left. If there's anything you want to share, anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to address.
No, just that I think you've asked a lot of good questions in the first interview. The follow-up, I'm sure there'll be a number of people who might ask questions, which as you've indicated earlier, or as you provided the questions to us, we can still answer these questions to the people that are out there and have send them forward. We want to remind people that we have an inauguration next week in Window Rock, Fort Defiance, Arizona, at the Fort Defiance Scout Sports Facility, and then the rest of the activities happen back in Window Rock at the fairgrounds. So we want to extend an invitation to everybody and come join us. There's a limited capacity, but if you come early, you probably have a seat. And again, thank your platform for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, and there's an inaugural ball. Is this the inaugural ball?
Yes, there's an inaugural ball that evening. Tickets are still available, and I think they're like $50 a piece. And I've teased my group and at the transition and said, I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to make it because you gotta be to work at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And we'll be busy all afternoon. So they're that's what I've shared with them though.
That's great. That's great. Well, I don't think there's been an inaugural ball before, so it's very exciting. I know folks I've talked to are excited about it, but
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so much, Patrick, for being here with us and sharing so much, giving us an extra 5 minutes. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we wish the very best to the president-elect and vice president-elect with the inauguration and the new administration.
One of these times soon, they'll be on the program.
Oh, good. Wonderful. That would be such an honor. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.